So hello and welcome to this presentation on video for consultants, where we're going to explore why video can be useful, how to use it, equipment you might need, some lessons learned, and let's see where we go from there. So I hope you enjoy it. Do remember to click on the subscribe button, as the YouTubers always say, and enjoy. What I'm going to suggest is I'm going to go through this presentation, but even though I hate PowerPoint for this kind of thing, I end up turning it into PowerPoint anyway. So I'm going to deliver this presentation, which I pulled together. I would guess it's going to take about 15 to 20 minutes. And then we'll switch into a more interactive discussion type thing. So the idea of this session really is to kind of sow the seeds for now of what we need to think about when we're doing videos as consultants. So the really useful thing up on the screen, I know David Clamp does this as well, is always have a little thing there to say recording, but I've actually set this meeting up so it records straight away. So what we're going to do then, I'm going to talk about videoing for people like us and the different forms it can take. So there's some examples on this opening screen, in fact, of things like over on the top left or wherever it is, there's one where I actually appeared on TV. That was with Piers Morgan and various people. That was actually delivered remotely from a coffee shop with me on a Wi-Fi connection, and it was not a very good connection at all. So that's probably a good example of bad video for consultants, but it was very useful at getting me a little bit of exposure, because it meant I got to go head to head against someone fairly well known. Next one down, you'll probably all recognise the Lloyd's of London building, where I've done a few videos just on my mobile phone. So it shows that we can use things like that as well. Next one down was another TV channel where we did some stuff where I was interviewed in a room in a hotel that I borrowed for the interview. Next one's where I did some YouTube stuff. And then finally, the last one was with a TV and radio presenter who was doing some work around blockchain and cryptocurrency. And we did a proper interview with some proper studio equipment in there. So what I'm going to cover off for this session is, why video and how it's useful, a little bit for you to think about options of what you may need to consider about how to produce video, kind of equipment. So we were talking already about green screens and that before. We'll go into that in a bit more detail later. The platforms that you can actually use. So we'll talk a little bit about, things like YouTube, which is very useful, on LinkedIn as well. Talk briefly about how to improve, some lessons learned, and then some next steps as to where we could take this. So as I say, this will take about 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up, because I realize that there are going to be other people who've got lots more experience than me and might be able to offer some advice as well. So why video? Well, I look at video as being used for three things. It's, you use it as a consultant for marketing and branding yourself. You use it as a form of training material, and you also repurpose the video material that you've produced as well. And I'll explain briefly what that is shortly. So we look at marketing and branding to begin with. So we've got my LinkedIn profile, which shows already how I do some video type stuff. And it even says I now deliver like webinars and masterclasses remotely. I've got a YouTube channel, which I keep pushing stuff onto, and it's all about brand building, really. So this is all about showing what I am, who I am, quite rawly as well. It's quite an honest presentation of me. It's not very glossy, it's not very professional, but it is me. Next area around video is around training. So I deliver webinars and seminars, either live or via streaming, or via Zoom calls like this, or pre-recorded as well. And I tend to put them onto YouTube afterwards, as it's a useful way of people re-seeing them. So already that's quite a powerful way of promoting your brand, by recording and doing your training, and then repurposing that, which takes us on to the third thing, to replay onto marketing. So they kind of go round on themselves in a way. But I do training courses, then take snippets out of training courses, which I use for part of the marketing and branding. So it's a little bit of effort to get a great benefit from it. So a little bit about you as a consultant, and this is the kind of the ultimate thing that I get into conversations about why you should use video. And it comes down to this quote out of the movie Taken, where the actor's saying, what I have is a particular set of skills which may be of interest to your employer. So video is a very, very effective way of conveying your expertise, your knowledge, your ability to communicate things, and your general style as well. And so I've actually had people who've looked at my videos and have then got in touch with me to say, I'll watch one of your videos. It's obvious you actually know what you're talking about, which makes a nice change from some of the other people. So it's very, very effective for that. But for you, the things to think about for video is, whether you would benefit from some additional training in some way for yourself. So things like, is media coaching useful? And you can do courses and classes on actually coaching skills for presenting in front of the media for TV and radio. I've not done any of those, but I have been to some of the sessions and they are very powerful and very useful. Another one is around voice training, and that could be really, really powerful. There's a guy called Roger Love, who is a world-renowned trainer in voice, and he teaches actors and business people and this kind of thing, because I discovered I'm not very confident with my voice, and so I tried to improve it by doing some courses. And that, what I also discovered, most other people aren't confident with their voice either, and we always hate to listen to ourselves. So sometimes by doing a bit of voice training, that can improve things. The third thing I mentioned on here, and I'm not going to go into these in any further detail, is presentation skills. We all know how to present in front of a group of people, or on stage, or for some of us at conferences. The presentation skills of how you present yourself remotely or via video are definitely different. And I spend a lot of time looking at people doing videos, and they are just so dull and so boring and so animated and that kind of thing. So there's real technique in that. And that leads me on to the fourth thing I mentioned around here about mentoring. And that's something maybe we could pick up separately from this session, about whether it's actually worth getting together and buddying up and running ideas across each other so we can learn, experience things from each other. So the next thing is around options to produce a video. And there's two main options, which is either getting videos done professionally or done homemade, as I describe them. So for the first one with professional, here's a number of examples. So they are a mixture of appearances that have been actually on TV channels where they've got full-blown studios. The one down in the middle at the bottom was me in a panel discussion on ITV's Good Morning, this time not with Piers Morgan, where they've got the whole studio set up and very professional. The one to the right of that, the green screen stuff, that was working with a video production company who actually do media training as well, and they video everything and they put it together, so that's quite good. Working my way up with where it says the Your Crypto Club. So that was a promo video for Marcus de Maria, who does a lot of crypto and traditional trading. Again, it's a professional type thing. And then the top one was some work I did with the Government Blockchain Association, where we did a Dragon's Den type thing, again with professional footage. Professionals will really get the best out of you. And I was having a conversation recently, I've included it down at the bottom there, a guy who lives locally to me who I've come to know, Red Jacket Media. They actually come along and they do video productions for you. So they actually do things like video business cards, which can look very nice indeed. So professional is definitely a thing that if you want it to look absolutely TV style, very, very professional production, then that's certainly worth considering. Next approach is what I describe as homemade, which is do it yourself, which is where I think a number of people watching this or listening to it afterwards would be of interest. So I do all my stuff homemade, and we'll take a look at the equipment around that shortly. And then I repurpose it or I publish it onto YouTube or sometimes Instagram and LinkedIn. Equipment is always the thing that people talk about. And so I'm going to quickly go into 4 areas around equipment: the hardware that you need, software, backgrounds, funnily enough, green screens comes up again, and some miscellaneous stuff as well. So I've listed off about 8 areas here, starting off with a camera. For the majority of my stuff, simply use the webcam that's built into my camera. I should have mentioned at the beginning of this, I'm a very PC person, by which I don't mean politically correct, I mean personal computer. But I've got a Microsoft Windows PC, it's got a built-in camera, and it's very, very good for the stuff I do, which is getting produced usually onto YouTube type stuff. I do have a Sony Handycam as well, which I occasionally use. The quality of that is excellent, but I just don't bother using it very often. And some people also use DSLRs, which can be quite good. But when you're starting out, initially, all you need is a laptop with a webcam. You don't need anything more. Microphone is something that's really, really important. I was speaking to one of the people who were on the call before about things like Yeti microphones, and there are various professional grade ones. I was using a mix of a headset microphone that I had. Then I just decided to use the laptop's built-in microphone on the Microsoft Surface. This is very good indeed. But for this recording, I'm using a Yeti, which is heading toward professional standard stuff. And it's on a separate stand, and it's got shock resistance and all sorts of stuff. But very, very important to get the sound right when you're doing these things. Next thing is lighting. The English daylight is completely unreliable. We get clouds, we get darkness, all this kind of thing. So it is very, very useful to invest in additional lighting. I'm onto my 2nd or possibly 3rd ring light at the moment, which are devices that you plug into a USB socket either in the wall or on your computer, and it just provides much better control of your lighting and makes things much better. 4th thing is a decent computer. Again, mine is Microsoft Surface something, I keep forgetting, but I think it's an i7 dual core with about 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it tends to work okay as long as I don't try and do what I'm doing now too often, which is to have OBS software and Zoom and some other stuff all running at the same time. But usually a normal laptop is sufficient to begin with. A really useful thing is a second screen. I don't have a second screen at the moment. This is useful for when you're presenting because you can actually see what you're presenting. So what I've done is I've done a really cheap and cheerful trick, which is I've joined this call today on my mobile phone as well. And I'm just using the screen off my mobile phone to actually see what's appearing on the screen from everyone. So that gets away from this whole, I don't know how amateurish you think it sounds when other people are saying, oh, can you see my presentation now? You know, it's like, well, if you've got a second screen or something where you can monitor it, that works fine. For those who are really getting into the space of doing videos, then a teleprompter can be very useful. I don't have one at the moment, which means I tend to read stuff off of Word documents that I've got on screen, and you can sometimes see my eyes tracking the Word document rather than looking at screen. At the moment, because of the way I'm displaying this, that doesn't matter because you can't really see my eyes anyway, but teleprompters are worth considering, and you can get one usually for about a couple of £100, which is probably a sensible investment if you're going to be doing a lot of presenting. Another thing to consider is around your Wi-Fi and your network. I just use my normal Wi-Fi into my router and my normal broadband line. The speeds on that seem to be pretty good where I live, but for some people you may need to consider either hard cabling in or getting a second line or using 4G or 5G something, which probably takes us on to the last thing to think about when you're doing video as well, is backup and contingency in case any of the above things fail. And the favorite one to fail is your phone line followed by power. So always be thinking if you're going to do something live, then have backups for those in some way. Taking us on to software. So I use a piece of software a lot called OBS. And what OBS does is it acts as a virtual camera. So this is my OBS dashboard at the moment. It allows me to do clever things, and hopefully this won't crash the whole thing. So I can do things like I can pull up different backgrounds if I want to, or I can just show the PowerPoint without it showing me. Really neat thing about this is that you can be really sneaky, and if you're delivering a presentation and you need to pop away, then you can pull in a recording of something. So that's quite clever because people don't even notice that you've done that. So that can be quite handy. So this is OBS. So OBS acts as an intermediary between what your camera sees and then whatever the software you're using, such as Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, or whatever, is seeing. So it acts as a layer in between your camera and the end thing. So that's very useful for doing really clever effects. So I can, put different backgrounds onto things. There's all sorts of features that we can add in, but I won't get too clever with it because if I do, it'll probably all fail on me. But OBS certainly on a PC is something I use. There are other pieces of software that you can use on other computers. Once you've produced a video, it can be useful to have some editing software. So I use VideoPad, which there's a free version of. I actually pay for the paid version, which I think is about $80 or thereabouts, and it allows you to edit the video, to interlace things, and to just make things a little bit better, which again, it's just about doing small things which add to the professionalism. Next thing is thumbnails. Now, for those who don't know, a thumbnail is when you're looking at something like on YouTube, it shows a little preview screen, kind of a picture typically, that's a thumbnail. They are incredibly powerful at improving the marketability of your videos because people will look at the thumbnail and that's what will actually attract them in the first place. It's quite a useful thing to be aware of. I use a free piece of software called Canva, which is web-based, and you can use that to produce thumbnails, produce Instagram pages, Facebook post shapes, LinkedIn posts, all this kind of thing. Very, very, very good stuff. And then finally, you sometimes discover that you've been using software like PowerPoint for a while without even realizing some of the more powerful capabilities. So I discovered a few months ago, you can actually record a PowerPoint presentation with you videoed in it within PowerPoint. And you can actually then save that PPT and it saves the whole recording. And I didn't realize it did that until I tried it. And the other really useful thing that PowerPoint can do as well is it can do subtitles live as you're actually delivering a presentation. So I've done that a few times now. If I'm giving a talk on a webinar or via Zoom, and I'm using PowerPoint, I turn on the subtitles so that there's anybody of hard of hearing, then they can actually see what's being said. So that's a very useful little trick. Next thing on the equipment side of thing is around backgrounds. So an example of my green screen, which means I can do things like I can have a picture of an office and I can green screen me so it looks as though I'm actually in the office, or I can put a fancy background. So this is how you see people who look as though they're on Mars or they've got San Francisco behind them and it looks really, really sharp and everything. It's the same approach that they use on TV and broadcast of just having a neutral color in the background, and then your video software or your editing software can get rid of it. And so it just works really well and it makes things look a little bit sharper. Finally, on equipment, a few miscellaneous things is always have checklists. So I have a checklist for when I'm going to run an event. So if I'm doing a video such as today, where I may contact attendees beforehand, make sure they've got the link, this kind of thing. Then before I actually start recording everything, I've got a pre-session checklist to make sure I've turned on OBS, that I've activated the virtual camera, that I've started recording, all that kind of thing. And then a really, really important one, once you've done a video, is post-event. I now have a list of all the things I have to do. And I know some people actually use marketing companies to do this for them. But when I do things like send a post out to LinkedIn, to Twitter, to Instagram, to Facebook, and so on, I've got a checklist of what I include in each of those to make sure I don't miss out on anything. Onto platforms then, and by this I mean two types of platform. Platforms used for presenting sessions that you're doing, like webinars and seminars, then publishing platforms, which is where you're publishing pre-recorded media. On presentations, the ones I tend to use, so we're using Zoom for this call at the moment. There are slight differences between Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars. You've got more control over how the whole session works in Zoom webinars, but Zoom meetings works fine. I use Facebook Live sometimes to live stream some events. Some people use LinkedIn Live, which is a way of live streaming into LinkedIn, but you have to apply for that, and not everyone gets through straight away. But I know some people doing that. And then one of the really clever things you can do is you can use a technique which some of you may know, which is multi-streaming, which is where you use software such as StreamYard or Restream, which take your video feed, so your live Zoom call or whatever, or via OBS, and it splits it out, so it then live streams it to Facebook, to Zoom, to various other things. So it's a way of actually hitting multiple channels all at once. And that's why you'll sometimes see people who are running a Zoom call or a Facebook Live, and they appear to be talking to a completely different audience to the ones that you're connected with. And it's because they're running it through multiple streams in some way. So they're all things worth thinking about for presentation channels. Then on publishing, I use YouTube, I use Vimeo, I use LinkedIn and Instagram for that matter. YouTube's really useful. I've got my own channel, I've got various playlists, and there's a thing in YouTube now called YouTube Shorts, which is where you do a video of under 60 seconds and in vertical format. So it's designed to encourage you to use your mobile phone. And that can be a very good way, because the YouTube algorithm seems to quite like shorts at the moment, so it actively promotes them, so it gets you a bit more publicity. Vimeo is a great alternative to YouTube because it gives you better control over how people can access the video, and you can embed it into other websites a little bit easier. LinkedIn, just mention that with LinkedIn, if you're going to post videos to LinkedIn, some people just do it via linking to a YouTube video that they produced. LinkedIn prefers things that stay on its own platform. So if you actually upload a video to LinkedIn, then they will rank that higher in when they actually serve that up to people. Whereas if you have, if you've written a LinkedIn post and you have a link to a YouTube video, then it seems to knock that down in its ratings for some reason. Instagram, growing appeal, probably not so much interest to some people in terms of the industry that they're in, that the market they're going after probably aren't Instagram users. But if you're going after the younger generations, then Instagram is the promotion chat channel these days. And it seems to be taking on as a rival, certainly for brands, against LinkedIn and YouTube at the moment, and Facebook for that matter. And then a couple of others, TikTok and Snapchat. I've not used Snapchat. I've done a couple of short videos for TikTok, just for the entertainment value of doing 15-second videos. So a few quick tips on how to improve. You can use various analytics to take a look at, if you're producing a YouTube video, for example, you can look at how many hits you get on that video, or if you've embedded it in your website, how many hits you're getting. Most important thing at the end of the day is how many referrals and inquiries you get out of it. So I know people who look at vanity metrics, they're always talking about how many YouTube subscribers or followers they've got, or how many LinkedIn connections they've got. You know what? It doesn't matter. It's how much business you're generating from it that really matters. And then there are things like doing SEO optimization, so search engine optimization. There are techniques you can use with video production and publishing, which will get the video up on the ranking, which gives it better exposure. Thumbnails, I mentioned a bit before, as a way of marketing collateral. The most important one on here of how to improve is JFDI. For those who don't know JFDI, I think Richard Branson wrote a book on it. It means just flipping do it. So get on with it, give it a go, and then do it even more. And the number of people I speak to who say, oh yeah, I'm going to give it a go, but I'm just waiting until I get, and it'd be until I get a camera, a microphone, a green screen, a reason to do it, a time to blah, blah, blah. Just get on with it. Do it and learn. If you look at, there's a very famous YouTuber called Mr. Beast. He's got millions and millions of subscribers, very successful, very popular. And if you look at his first videos, they were pretty basic and they were done on a mobile phone, and he just improved over time. And now he's an absolute world leader. So some lessons learned. Audio, I would say, is the number one most important thing, even for video. Even though you've got images, the quality of the image is less important than the quality of the sound, because if people can hear you, they'll carry on watching. If they can't hear you, they won't watch. That said, whilst audio is number one, number zero, actually the most important thing is content, because it doesn't matter how good the quality of the video is if you're not delivering good content, which isn't of value to people. So that's the absolute most important thing. Then comes lighting. I've mentioned about ring lighting, that kind of thing, that can be useful. And then thumbnails to improve the marketing. And the other useful thing I've found as well is if you're doing live events in some way, being in touch with the other people. I run a number of webinars and panels and that. It's absolutely invaluable to set up a WhatsApp channel or WhatsApp group where we can just communicate live in case there are any technical delays or anything like that. I've done that with a couple of conferences where I've been moderating a panel for a conference and they've had some technical difficulties. The next speaker's not able to come on. And so the organizer has been able to get through to me on WhatsApp to say, Gary, can you keep going for an extra 10 minutes or something? And the organizers love that because it's giving them a bit of flexibility and it's making you sound even more professional. And finally, next steps. It's really up to you to now think about where you want to go with this kind of thing and how we can explore it further. So I hope you found that of interest. What I will do is I will switch off my sharing. So we'll come back to that. So now we can see everyone. And I'll hand it all over to you. Thoughts, comments? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, thank you. That was brilliant. That's my kind of like overriding thing. That was fantastic. So thank you.
Very generous, Gary, sharing your experience.
No problem. And that's all been gained over the last, I would guess, 2 years. So it's stuff that I've just picked up and learned, really. So any questions from that or any thoughts or comments?
Gary, I just share the tools that you share, like OBS, VideoPad. Those are platform independent, so they run on the Mac as well.
I don't actually know, to be honest.
No, I do. I'm saying they do. I have them as well. Yeah. So good. Those are good tips to give people, and platform agnostic. So I don't know about Linux, but at least Mac or PC, you're covered.
That's good. It's sometimes a problem I have that people say, oh yeah, I prefer this type of software, and you're talking them through something for 10 minutes. And then they go, I've got an iPad. It's like, okay, that's not going to work then. Yeah. Okay,
Gary, I've got something for you.
Go for it.
Just quickly, thanks for a question. Then is in terms of production time. So once you've shot something and you're using ODS or something else, I mean, how much time do you? I mean, obviously, perfection is a long journey, but how long do these things take to do the after production of once you've shot it and you want to splice together a little bit?
Yeah, great question. So I strive for adequacy over excellence. I'm a firm believer of it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be just good enough. And I'll admit that's why sometimes the stuff I push out isn't brilliant. It might have a few glitches or whatever. So it really depends. I'll give the classic consultant's answer of it depends. And it depends on what the nature of it is. So I did a 5-minute video on, I think it's what is cryptocurrency a while ago. And I quickly pulled it together for a group of people. And that was almost literally take the video and then just repurpose it, stick a an intro at the beginning and a close at the end, and that was it. So that probably took me 20 minutes after doing the 5-minute recording type thing. The recording can take time, particularly if you do several shoots. I did a professional video with the Chartered Insurance Institute a couple of years ago, where I did a 1-hour shoot on blockchain and insurance, and it was all scripted. I'd written the script, and I had the professional person recording me and everything, and we did the whole thing in one shoot. So 1-hour video, we recorded it in 1 hour without a break. All went brilliantly. I've never managed to do that again since. So it really depends upon, how much editing you need to do post-production, really. I try and do as little as I can. And it does depend upon the nature of it. I just did a piece of work with an art gallery in London, and I produced an explainer video for them, and then shared it with them. And I said, oh yeah, that's great, but can you just change it so where it says McDougall's, it's got 2 L's instead of 1 L or something? And it's like, okay, because I'd had that through the whole of the video. So that meant I had to reshoot it. So I guess come back to the question, how long does it take? The answer is it depends.
Thanks, Gary.
No
And
problem.
thanks for sharing all your stuff as well.
No problem. Happy to help. And the other thing as well is that there are others in the group who are doing this stuff as well, who I'm sure could help out with some other thoughts. I mean, Gary, you seem to be exploring this domain more and more at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit. It was, I mean, it spawned from just kind of like thinking, God, there's something different, anything that's vaguely different. So I thought, oh yeah, videos. And the first lot I did, I actually got a videographer round, and I had the things scripted, and I knew what I wanted to do. And it involved basically like talking and drawing, and then kind of like merging the two together, which they did kind of in the edit. But it's interesting, I didn't realize about the PowerPoint thing, the recording that, and you think, oh, okay, maybe I can do that. So I might explore that going forward. So I'll have a look at that. But so I had a videographer come round, and they, with a lighting and a kind of half decent camera and mic and all that sort of stuff. The one thing which I found, well, a couple of things I found. One, my expectation of what it was like talking to a camera delivering stuff was a lot different than I thought it was going to be. I kind of thought it was going to be in the same ballpark as talking to an audience delivering something. No, there's what you don't realize, and I hadn't appreciated at all, with an audience, even if they're just there and listening, you kind of getting all sorts of feedback from them in terms of kind of like what they're doing and stuff. With a video, there's nothing. It's the silence is absolutely deafening, and it's really, really weird.
Yep.
So I took a few goes just to not be so wooden. It was really, really odd. So that was one thing that I got. The importance of lighting, absolutely. The other thing which I really missed was a teleprompter. I'm not very good, unless it's something that I'm really, really on top of and I'm very focused on. I find I will miss things that I want to say, or just explain or articulate something not quite how I wanted to. So having things scripted for me, I find very, very useful. And Gary, you mentioned about kind of like your eyes wandering across the page if you're doing things. So a teleprompter would be really good. I've subsequently seen, and I haven't tried this yet, but I'm going to, the next thing I do, I will probably use a monitor sitting behind a camera. Mm-hmm. And I'll basically have a very big Word document and use it like a teleprompter with a wireless mouse and just scroll through. So I'm going to give that a go, see if that works. But I think that might work, certainly for perhaps shorter, 2-3 minute type things.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I was going to say as well, there's something that you said just before teleprompter that I thought, yeah. Actually, there was a couple of things. One you mentioned about, you said you got the videographer to do the drawings and that kind of thing. There is a piece of software called Doodly that you can use that some people buy. Doodly, again, I think everything seems to be priced at about $80 these days. But Doodly is one of these pieces of software whereby you sketch out a type thing and you talk through something, and it produces video animation really easily. So you see lots of these cartoon sketch type things, explainers. I think most of them are done through Doodly.
We'll have to have a look at that, because that's good. And so, yeah, just to be able to sync up, you know, the narrative, the voiceover, and to sync it up with the appropriately sped up or sped down doodling and drawing, that would be really good. The other thing which, the other thing actually, which I would say is going on the light thing. I'm in an office at the moment. I've got a window on this side, and I haven't got a blind on it. Yes, that's a pain. So a blind would be good. Certainly, if you've got light coming in from one side. But I've got a ring light, and this is off the back of an experience which I did do a web podcast, no, web thingy with Ed Halsey. But looking back at it, I was just using a laptop camera, which was horrible. I hadn't appreciated there was a difference between HD and full HD. Mm-hmm. There's a huge difference. So off the back of that, I actually invested in a separate webcam. So I'm using a Logitech Brio cam. It can record in 4K, but I use it at 1080, which just works better for me. I've got a ring light over there, and I've got two small lights here, which I can just, you know, put around the desk just to try and balance things up. Doesn't always work. But I am shortly, hopefully, going to relocate into a bigger room in the house. So the office will be a bit better in terms of trying to sort of like get some of this stuff set up properly.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the more that you can control your environment, the better. You know, so that's the kind of thing. And it's interesting as well, you talk about lighting, because my ring light's beginning to fail at the moment. But I don't know if you can see on your screen at the moment, I've got this screen here that is coming from my mobile phone. So that is just using natural light plus a little bit of a ring light, and it's quite bright. And then I've got this camera here, which if some of you might be able to see, which I've now got rid of the green screen. So you can't see the green screen. I put the artificial backdrop off. The handy thing is, if you actually tell it you've got a green screen, it does clever things like, see, I've got a gap between my headphones and the speakers, whatever. If you tell it it's got a green screen, then it allows for that. So you don't see some things like leave that as green. So that can be quite a useful thing. But you can see that that's two images of me with not particularly specialist camera type things, you know, a mobile phone and a webcam. Quality of them is quite good, but yeah, the Logitech Brios have got a really good reputation. So that's excellent. Thanks for that, Gary.
So Gary, what? By the way, this is great. Thank you. So what microphone do you use?
So I have just invested in a Yeti Sherpa, I think it's called, which is just about sticking out the corner of there. So I got that a few days ago.
Because the microphone you're using is good. It's probably much better than mine, and much better than the other Gary. There's an echo. I don't know if does the microphone affect the echo?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And in fact, silly me for just taking it out there. Hang on. Can you hear me again now?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The microphone definitely does change the quality of things. And this microphone has got multiple settings for what type of pickup. So I've got it set up so it just picks up my voice coming out. If I was doing an across the table interview, it's got a configuration for that. Or if you were playing music and you wanted to pick up the whole room, it can do that. It's got a gain control, so it can be less sensitive or more sensitive. So like I think it goes at the moment. I can hear in the background. You got birds? You got small
I
birds?
do, yeah. I do
Yeah,
have
yeah.
birds.
So that shows how sensitive your microphone is, which is lovely until you want people to listen to what you're presenting or what your video is.
Not the birds.
Exactly. I had exactly that. I did a presentation skills course a while ago, where what they did was they set you challenges each day on what you had to do, and you had to do a video of yourself, a 5-minute explaining video about what you were, what you did, blah blah blah. And I did it with my Sony Handycam out in the garden, and that's at the point at which I discovered two things. One, the Handycam's microphone is incredibly sensitive, and two, there's a lot of birds in my garden. I'd never noticed them. So yeah, so the ability to change the gain, so how sensitive the microphone is very useful.
So is that the USB microphone?
Yeah, it plugs in into a USB, yes.
Okay. And I saw a little bit of the microphone. It's like, how does it hang so high? You have...
Because it's got a very, very industrial scale mounting bracket. So it's got must be 2, maybe 3 foot. It is a massive thing. It's a big piece of work. It's quite expensive. Solid, I think it is steel or something, mounted on a desk that I have with a G clamp, and it's actually got like a Y mount or whatever, and it's got a shock absorbing type thing on it as well.
So is it Yeti, J-E-T-T-I Sherpa?
Why?
No, Yeti as in Y-E-T-I. I think it is, if you Google Blue or Blue Yeti or Blue Sherpa, there's a whole range of them. And what I can show as well, that there's someone did a brilliant review of practically every microphone on the market. And they've published this with all of their findings, with videos, with sound recordings of what every single microphone sounds like. And it was brilliant, because you could just go through and go, yeah, that sounds good, that sounds good. But for each person, your microphone needs will differ. If you've got good control over your environment, you know, so you can lock the room, soundproof the room and everything like that, then having a focus sensitive microphone is less important. Whereas if you're somebody who's got a noisy background and that kind of thing, you want something that you can alter the gain and actually make it less sensitive.
Mm.
But yeah, Yeti is a well-known one. That there are others out there. I'm not saying that just to promote Yeti. I'm not on a commission, sadly, but they are known for being pretty good quality.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I was in a conference just for 2 days, and almost all the speakers were CEOs and this and that, and half of them I couldn't hear. I mean, like I couldn't believe like these people couldn't buy decent microphones. Like thousands of people are watching them, and nobody can understand anything. The microphone is the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, to be honest as well, even when I was beginning to record things on my mobile phone initially, I bought, I think it was a £20 little unit, I've forgotten what you call them now, where you just plug them onto your lapel. I think they're called lapel mics. And again, it's on a micro USB connection. It plugs into the phone. The quality of the sound on that is excellent. So if you check my YouTube channel, there's a couple of videos of me standing outside the Lloyd's building where I use that just to record it. And the sound quality, despite all the background noise, is still pretty good. And I agree completely. If you're a CEO of a company and you're using such low quality equipment, it's to the point of being irresponsible.
I know, it's pathetic almost.
Yeah, particularly at conferences where everyone's got expectations these days.
Yeah, yeah. So Gary Burke, you have a pretty good camera, and Philip too, by the way. Are you using your? I mean, my built-in camera, even though it's an expensive PC, is actually pretty lousy.
I've got a
have to use an
Logitech
external one, but
webcam.
you're using your PC.
I'm using a Logitech webcam, not the Brio, but the little square one that you can just either have on the stand or clip on the top of your screen, which was a kind of a game changer for me, because I can also have it on a tripod, so I can move it around and I think one of the issues I've got is that if you've got the opportunity to set up a sort of a studio thing, and then you're going to do that right and spend the time doing it to say do a bit of video, then in the meantime suddenly you're, I don't know, dropping into a Camelot call or something, and then you've got another meeting where somebody else is calling you, and you suddenly find yourself on Zoom, and then you find yourself on Teams, and you have to redo all the settings. Because if, you know, where my camera's picking me up and I'm sort of in the screen here, then I go on to Teams, and unless I fiddle around with the settings, I'm sort of like here somewhere, because it just does everything differently. And that's the same with the lighting. And I'm not quick enough and smart enough. If I get off one meeting and go on the other, then I'm going to do the video. I have to kind of recalibrate everything each time, and I found that screwed up my lighting too. So I've got a ring light, but I stopped using it because it was so bright here in the summer that I didn't need it. And now I'm sitting a bit later than normal, and it's gone cloudy, so suddenly it all went dark here, and I didn't have time to set the ring light up again. So that's how professional I am at the moment.
Yeah. That's another thing I struggle with, the lighting. It's actually on bright days my camera is so bad. It's on dark, cloudy days it does much better. And I tried a ring light, but then it reflects off my glasses. So I'm always struggling with light. So that's why I saw one of you don't. I think Gary, you had a square looking thing, which is more of a rectangle. I think that's better than a ring light. A ring light is just too bright.
I think going back to Gary's answer, it kind of depends. But the more control you've got over your environment, the better. Is instantly, am I echoing then, or is my vocal fairly?
No, you're not echoing, but
no, neither of you are echoing.
You're perfectly understandable, Gary. It's just your voice relative to the other Gary is a little tinny, so you could hear the difference in the quality of the microphone.
Okay, because I'm just using the microphone that's built into the Brio.
Yeah, so do I.
But isn't it funny? It can be just little things that just give that edge. Because I've been listening to myself, and it's always difficult when you listen to yourself, but it is when you can just get rid of that little bit of tinniness or whatever. But what you're saying about lighting, because I've got a ring light on at the moment, hopefully, unless I go like that, and actually that light reflection is because of the natural light out of the window. What I found is that if you angle the ring light at a certain angle, you don't get the reflection. What people seem to do for some reason is they stick it right in front of the face, and they stick it on bright. So of course it's going to reflect in your glasses, or they have the laptop set, and they're trying to read a Word document, and a Word document naturally being white makes the laptop screen white, and that then reflects in their glasses. So it's just about figuring things out before you do them.
Yeah, I bought a gooseneck precisely to put the light at a specific angle where it kind of reduces but not eliminates the reflection.
Yeah. I was just going to quickly mention, Phil mentioned something before about reconfiguring everything for all the different platforms you go on to. A lesson I've learned to my cost about this is you'll see at the moment I've got my things here, which because I'm monitoring it remotely, I can see that you can actually read my LinkedIn thing and my email, and it says Disalytics, which is my company, that kind of thing. If I go on to Google Meet, then it reverses it. And if I go on to Teams, it reverses it. And I'd actually been spending some time on Teams meetings with someone. And I think it was after about 2 weeks, they said, what is it? What does that say there? Because it's reversed. And no one had mentioned it. And then Teams has even done a really nasty one before now, where it was 5 minutes into a call with somebody, and it was a team call as well. And they started commenting about my slippers. And it's because Teams had picked up my other camera, but was showing on screen me looking at me. So as we've got it now, this is what it looked like. But but what it was actually broadcasting to everybody else was through my other camera, which is one of the risks of having multiple cameras in a laptop.
Is this software?
Yeah, that actually happened to me one time.
Sorry, Gary, what'd you say?
No, I was saying, is this software just trying to be too clever and helpful?
I think it's live work, but getting a little bit too incapable of the complexity.
Yeah.
I'd just say I've really appreciated this. I'm under a bit of pressure here, so I think I've started dabbling in this. I don't know what I'm going to use it for yet, but I started dabbling. But my son, who's like 23 or something now these days, actually ended up doing a little bit of TV work a while back, and so he and then he's done some music. So he's done music videos and stuff. So he does all this. And one of the things he told me was, and Gary and Will, you both spoke about that, about doing the presentation to the camera. When he was filming, he found it very easy to talk to the camera because he was filming. There were people around him. So he had an audience, even though there were no audience.
Mm.
And then he got called up to be interviewed on the TV when he was at home, and he couldn't do it because suddenly it was an entirely different medium for him because he was just talking to his screen. But he didn't do it. And so the next time he did it, he got some friends over who hung around behind the screen, just sitting quietly, having a coffee and that and watching, because then although he was talking to the screen, there were people behind, so he was talking to people.
I know someone who's got an A4 photograph of people, and she just sticks that behind her computer. How's that for control? The other thing you mentioned as well, funnily enough, mentioning your son, is how you can learn things from younger people. So my children both are doing their own video things, and it was my 10-year-old who taught me how to do a video intro using Vimeo Intros, I think it's called. Yeah. And she said the other week that she wants to do a video intro for a YouTube channel. And I said, well, go and find out how to do it, because I don't know how to do it. And then she called me back half an hour later and said, so what do you think of this then? It's like, bloody hell, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So yeah,
children got, I think he's above 1 million followers on Instagram. So when he does his Instagram thing, he has to be very, very careful about how he does it and what he does. And I've learned quite a bit from him. I've learned from my son about how to behave on social media, which is the wrong way round, because he's been trained on it to know what he should and should not do, so that he doesn't trip over himself. Yeah.
So that might be a useful segue into my final question for this session, really, of is there anything in particular that we'd like to do after this in terms of are the things that we can drill further into for people, or are there lessons we can learn from each other, or more learning tips? Exactly as you say, there are things to do and not to do that would be useful for sharing. Is it worthwhile organising another session at some point where we can go into more detail on some things like that? What's the interest around that?
Yeah. From my, whilst I'm chatting before I continue, from my side, I think having sort of seen this and obviously made some notes and thought about it, I'll be going away doing a little bit or looking at the software or something, and that will probably raise 1 million questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really necessarily have anybody I can ask. So to me, to have a time of, okay, what was it again? JFDI. If I go and JFDI, then when I've JFDI'd, I'll probably think, I wish I hadn't JFDI'd, and I've got some more questions. So it'd be excellent in that respect to have a follow-up and say, okay, what have we learned? What are the lessons learned? And now we've actually looked at, say, the software, or we fiddled around with some stuff. What do we most want to know?
Yeah. The other thing as well is if you give it a go and you make loads of mistakes, it's a bit like I had to go snowboarding once, and the instructor loved me because he said, you're brilliant. You make every mistake in the book, so I can use you to demonstrate things. And so we can do the same. That if we get together as a group at some point, we could always organize a 5-minute video that each of us has to do or something. Task everyone to do it, because actually you're then motivated. It's more of a mentoring type thing, and then we can critique each other. Then that would be quite a useful thing for everybody, I would guess.
That's brilliant, Gary. That's brilliant, because you know what?
Please.
Because JFDI, but I'm struggling with where do I start? Starting is the hardest thing,
Which is where the setting you a task is
I
probably
think-
good
I think
enough.
so.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
I keep saying I need to do it because it's a very effective medium, but then I keep delaying it, or I keep thinking about I need to buy a camera, I need to buy this, I need a green screen, so I keep delaying it for technical reasons.
Yep.
Because the real problem is, where do I start? That's really the problem, I think.
So here's my suggestion then. We'll call this session to a close because we're just on 1:30. But what I will do is I will post out a challenge which everyone can join in, not just the people who join the session today, but everyone on the network, of just producing a 5-minute video about who you are, what you do, and an area of interest where you want to just go into a few more minutes. And it has to be 3 minutes or 5 minutes or something. We'll set that within date, and we'll run it as a mini competition, and then we'll re-meet and we'll go through it. How does that sound, folks?
That sounds really good.
Great, that's great.
Right. Okay.
So just Gus, on your point about I need this equipment and that equipment, this is my green screen. It's a $1.99 green plastic tablecloth put on some bits of cardboard, hence you can see the creases and stuff. It kind of does the job. It will get better, but that's my step one. It cost me £2.
So how did you handle it? Because I'm struggling with that.
Think nailed to the wall kind of thing, and you're kind of there.
Okay, yeah,
Right.
folks. So I was going to say, let's call a close on this because we're 1:30. But it'll be good if you do have any questions or anything, build a list up, and we'll see if we can actually have a Q&A session at some point. And in the meantime, I'll think about setting as a task, which will make you just flipping do it. Okay, thanks for your time, folks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed
Thank
it. Have a good
Take care.
day.
Brilliant,
Cheers.
Gary. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye now.
Everybody.
Good weekend.